We can talk to Duncan Robertson, who's a policy and strategy academic at Loughborough University, fellow of St Catherine's College, Oxford. Duncan, you heard the kind of back of envelope calculation that Greg Clark did there that got to a figure of maybe 5 million self-isolating over the next few weeks. I mean, what was that reasonable? What would you put on that figure?
Well, I think that was a pretty good estimate, and of course, what's going to drive that number is really essentially what the government's strategy is going forward. It was interesting hearing Dr. Mike Ryan there talking about verifying the logic of what the government are trying to do, and of course, that's really going to determine what happens next in terms of number of people who are infected, and that's a really important thing to understand about what does the government actually want to do with going from the roadmap. And of course, the roadmap was calibrated against Alpha, and now we have Delta, which is much more infectious. And really, instead of kind of strengthening the mitigations, we seem to be sort of abandoning them in the face of a more transmissible variant.
Do you see cases per day going above 100,000? The health secretary has conceded 100,000, perfectly plausible over the next few weeks. Do you see it carrying on doubling once it gets up there? It's currently, at a doubling rate of 40 or 50% a week at the moment. What would you see happening?
Well, it really depends on things like hospitalisation. So at the moment, it was interesting hearing the Prime Minister quoted about the link between cases and serious disease. Well, certainly the link between cases and hospitalisations hasn't been broken. We have roughly 40% increases in cases, but we also have roughly 40% increases in patients admitted to hospital. And that's, of course, just patients admitted. But in terms of things like serious disease, well, that really depends who you are. So, you have to think about not everybody's vaccinated equally, for example. So, say 6 out of 10 black people have had 2 vaccinations compared to about 9 out of 10 white people. So the link is still there if you haven't been vaccinated. And of course, it's a great success, the vaccination program, but it's not equal. It's not equal according to ethnicity, well, age, certainly, we know that, deprivation, inner city. So really, there's going to be a variation about, where the cases are. And unfortunately, the links between cases and hospitalizations and indeed serious disease, if you haven't been vaccinated, haven't been broken.
No, and that's clearly the scientific view. And I coming back to isolation, one rather interesting issue is compliance with isolation rules. People might get pinged on the app and just might not tell anybody. No one knows any better. So contacts may not be isolating in the numbers that people are talking about, but only because they may not be obeying the rules.
Well, it depends what you mean by obeying the rules, because, of course, there's no obligation to isolate unless, as you say, you have been pinged by the app or Test and Trace have phoned up. So, if you're thinking of going to the final at Wembley, or you're perhaps going on holiday, the incentives aren't really there to, put yourselves at risk of being pinged. So, unfortunately, so really great if, on the 16th of August, perhaps the vaccinated people won't have to self-isolate, and that's going to encourage people to get vaccinated. But it also may encourage people not to be pinged by the app. So it's really going from this sort of epidemiological stage to really behavioural stage. And of course, the government is really very responsible really for the messaging that goes on. They can either say it's Freedom Day, let's all go and have a party, or they can essentially say, well, actually this is the Delta variant. It is still quite risky, especially if you haven't been vaccinated. And it's really that messaging over the next week or two that's going to be very important to see how many people get infected, how many people are hospitalised, and of course the pressure that puts on the health service, and whether we end up in potentially lockdown 4.
Duncan Robertson, thanks for that. Loughborough University.